We might well say it's 9:15.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then like 9:30 would be like it's half nine. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We have a video that we're going to be checking out this time by Lost in the Pond. The guy's name's Lawrence. He's from England. He's been living here in the United States for quite some time. Used to live in Indiana, Indianapolis, I believe. Now he lives over in Chicago. Anyways, this video is 10 ways Brits and Americans use numbers differently. Which I'm not sure what that means exactly. Okay, that's what was so intriguing to me, to be honest with you. I know, different people, like I know about time, right? So the thumbnail of this video shows two clocks with different times, right? American clock and a British clock. So like I know that different countries take time differently. Like we all live on a 24-hour time frame, obviously, right? We're all on Earth. But like here, we do like 12 and 12. So like, you got midnight, and then you got 1 in the morning, 2, whatever, right? And then it goes out to 12 for noon, and then it circles back around. Instead of going to 13 for 1 o'clock, it just goes back to, 1, and then starts over at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So you got AM and PM, so morning and afternoon, or morning and night, depending on what part of the day. And I know that other countries do like 24-hour time. Here they call it military time because the military uses the 24-hour time period. So to say 1 in the afternoon, instead of saying 1 p.m., they would just say 1300 hours or whatever. And I know that the dates are different. So like here, it's August 11th, so we would say 8/11. But in other countries, they would say 11/8. It'd be month, then day. Whereas here, it's day, then month. Or no, sorry, we do month, then day, then the year. Other places do the day, then the month, then the year. So yeah, that's about the only thing I know. But evidently there's 10 ways that Americans and Brits use numbers differently. So we're definitely going to check that out. Make sure you check out his channel, Lost in the Pond. There will be a link in the description section for this original video, as always, along with links to the Patreon if you want to go check that out.
Oh, hello, don't mind me, just using the calculator on my phone, which I keep in my pocket just to stick it to my Year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury. And speaking of maths, remember a few videos ago when I said this? A question that I get all the time is why do British people say maths instead of math? Well, when it comes to Britain and America, this is by no means the only difference that involves numbers. In fact, since I moved to the United States, my daily life has become filled with numeric anomalies with which my brain may never come to terms. Now, before I get into that, I do want to point out that this video will not be examining our two countries' different measuring systems, because I also did that in a previous video. And while we're on the subject of numbers, if you want to propel this channel to 1 million subscribers, and you haven't yet become one yourself, do that now.
My channel actually needs subscribers, by the way. What a coincidence. I'm on my way to try to get 100,000, so if you wanted to help me out, that would be amazing.
Ow. In the meantime, here are 10, yes, 10 ways that British and American people use numbers very differently.
All right, I'm excited.
Now, before I hit record on today's video, I did...
Well, everybody has addresses differently, right? Like, you got different streets, different numbers. I don't know, we're going to see.
A little bit of a tally as to how many places I've lived in either country. During the 26 years that I lived in Britain, I lived at precisely 5 addresses, compared to 9 during the 16 years that I've lived in America. And during that time, one major pattern has stood out to me. American addresses definitely have longer house numbers, but British addresses have longer postcodes. So it all evens out. In fact, let me give you some examples of what I mean. From memory, every single address that I had in Britain comprised of 2 digits. And pound for pound, the experience of most British people is that their house address won't ever exceed 3 digits. There are occasional exceptions to that, but in America...
Why is that? Like, what if you have a long street? I mean, I guess in a long street, you could have 90 up to 99. That's still quite a bit. That makes sense.
America, those exceptions seem to in fact be the rule. Because at virtually all of the places that I've lived in the US, the house or the apartment number has been in the thousands.
You know why that is, though? So that said 4008. right? That was the reference address that was shown on the screen, because that's the 4,000 block, the eighth house in. So everything's in like grid and chunks and sections, right? So you got, you'd have, it would start with 1,001, right? Then 1,002, 1,003, whatever in this section. The next section starts at 2,000. So then you know that, okay, it's going to be in the 1,000 block, 3,000 block, or whatever. So that's why we do it here. At least I'm not a postmaster, okay, but that's what I've heard.
And also, at some of these addresses, the American street name itself might contain a number, like 321st Avenue. They don't usually go that high. But 2nd Street. In Britain, a street that's also a number is very uncommon, to the extent that I'm not sure they even exist. However, as I said, Britain has America beat when it comes to the size of our postcodes. And if for whatever reason you're confused by the term postcode, it is simply what Americans know as a zip code. You see, in Britain, a postcode can range from 6 to 8 characters, where in the US it's just 5. However, notice there that I said
6 to 8. I wonder why.
From 6 to 8 characters, where in the US it's just 5. However, notice there that I said characters and not numbers. Well, since this video is all about numbers, there is something to keep in mind here. British postcodes are a combination of letters and numbers, meaning that American zip codes probably have more numbers, but that's
Numbers and letters? Interesting. See, like where I'm at, it's 46951, 5 letters. Rochester, Indiana, close to me, is 46975. It's all 5 letters. Warsaw, Indiana, 46950. Well, Warsaw has like 5 zip codes, but it's weird that there's letters and numbers. I want to know why now.
Whatever. The first letters in a UK postcode denote the postal region. So for example, where I grew up in Grimsby, that was part of the Doncaster postal code for some reason. So the first 2 letters are DN. And then you have a series of numbers and letters that denote a more precise location. And that's it. In America, it's just numbers, so that's easy. And basically, the first couple of digits are arranged by state. So here in the state of Illinois, those first 2 digits range from 60 to 62. Of course, when it comes to the size of your house number, there's one group of people who don't give a...
I guess that would make sense. Like everywhere I've lived in Indiana, the zip code starts with like 46.
A flying herd of badgers, and that's data brokers. Instead, they're so preoccupied with making bank from selling your address to people search sites. After buying my first American house, I started showing up on hundreds of them. How do I know? Because each instance was identified by today's sponsor, Incogni.
Bits. Well, we're gonna skip that. You guys go check it out, though. There's the code. Get that discount. Help out Lawrence there.
Get your discount and to thereafter protect your data. The link is in my description below.
It's down there.
One other series of digits over which Britain has America beat is phone numbers, actually. Typically speaking, if we're not calling from overseas, in which we would need to use a country code, then a UK phone number usually consists of 11 digits. US phone numbers, meanwhile, consist of 10, basically 2 zip codes put together. The major difference here comes in the area code. For the first 20 years of my life, growing up in Grimsby, my area code was 01472, 5 digits. But it's worth keeping in mind that that only applies to landline phones. In the last 25 years, of course, we've seen the rise of the mobile phone and/or calculator. In Britain, unlike with landline phones, these are not assigned an area code. In fact, I think most, if not all, mobile phones in the UK begin with the digits 07. Incidentally, those are 2 digits that are going to be very important later on in this video, so keep watching. In America, I was surprised to find that this was quite different, because your mobile, or cell phone as it's usually known in the US, will usually carry the same area code as your landline phone, if you still have a landline phone.
Right.
So for example, the first place that I lived was Anderson, Indiana.
I literally lived in Anderson when I was a kid for a little while. Interesting. It's not too far from Indianapolis. Very interesting.
And that city is in a region of Indiana that carries the area code 765. So all of the landlines there begin 765. And if you purchase your cell phone there, most likely that too will have the same area code. And most states, like Indiana and my current state of Illinois, are home to multiple area codes, which is why it was surprising to discover there are in fact 12 states, including the behemoth that is Alaska, that have just one. And that's because
Because there's like 12 people that live in Alaska.
States have more cows than people, probably.
He didn't explain how we do it here so much. So 10 digits, okay? So around here, 574. That's basically like the top half of Indiana, my state, okay? Basically anything in that region, in the top half of the state of Indiana, is going to give you 574 as your first three numbers. Then the next three numbers. The next three numbers goes by more like broken down by region, like this little area here that might have these handful of cities gets this 3-digit code, right? This city, this handful of cities over here, and that region gets that. So the first three is the region of the state, or like the top half of the state that you're in. Then it narrows it down. The next three is to the cities. And then, of course, the last four is just randomized for your actual number.
Earlier on, when I said this, just to stick it to my Year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury, it did occur to me that my thousands of American viewers might have been thinking, what's Year 10? Was Lawrence born in the 1st century?
I know what this means because of Harry Potter. Year 10, that's just like 10th grade, right?
No. A year in this instance is the equivalent of what Americans would call a grade at school. And it just happens that this particular example is a year populated by 14 to 15-year-olds. And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, that's not 10, that's grade 9. Well, actually, it's both, you. See, from between the ages of 5 to 6, British children begin what is known as Year 1. But as I discovered while
we call that kindergarten here.
Watching the documentary The Kindergarten Cop, Americans don't call that the 1st grade, they call it kindergarten. And so their numbering system is always one behind us. Oh, yeah. And speaking of years, that brings us on to this.
Which I never understood, because it's like, if you're in 10th grade, you're really in 11th. Like, that's your 11th year. It's confusing. Why do they do that? They try to trick you so it doesn't seem like you're going to school that much, I guess. And then they also pop in preschool before kindergarten sometimes. It's not mandatory, it's optional, but still.
I think at this point, most of us are probably aware that Britain and America can't agree on how to write the date. Obviously, in Britain, it's day 1st, month 2nd, and year last.
Exactly. This is what I was saying earlier, and it's not necessarily exclusive to like a Britain situation. I think it's just Europe in general does day 1st, then month, and then year.
As evidenced by our famous Guy Fawkes slogan, remember, the 5th of November. Whereas in America, of course, it's flipped, as evidenced by July the 4th. Americans usually say the 4th of July. I don't know why they do that.
Interesting, and it might be because of when 4th of July was first founded or first made. You know, we just stopped being under Britain rule. Like, that was the day of our independence from Britain's rule, right? So during that time, we probably did our dating system pretty well similar to Britain, because it was at the tail end, Britain's rule, right? So I would assume it just stuck as just Happy 4th of July. It's just something you say, right? And then we go on to switch our dates, and we're like, oh, we don't want to be like Britain, or, we're going to switch the way we do our dates. But yet the phrase 4th of July stuck instead of saying July 4th. Just a theory.
But for everything else, it's the month 1st and the day 2nd. Why do they do that? Well, you'll just have to watch my YouTube short all about it.
Okay, maybe I will.
One of my longtime patrons, Jeff, asked me on this week's secret live stream. In the US, most people have memorized their phone numbers and social security numbers. What personal numbers are people expected to know in Britain? And phone numbers used to be one of those until we didn't need to anymore. But our equivalent of America's social security number is our national insurance number, or as
national insurance number, huh? So that's basically what is like our social security number. I've never heard of this.
It's known intimately to me, NIN. Nobody calls it that, really. So, what are the major numerical differences between an SSN and a NIN? Well, for once, it isn't the number of characters, because an SSN has 9 and a NIN has 9. Try saying that after 7 White Russians.
Okay.
So the difference here...
Oh, White Russians are good, actually. I haven't had those in a long time.
Is similar to zip codes versus postcodes. A NIN is comprised of 2 letters, followed by 6 numbers, and another letter for good measure. In the US, it's all numbers. America doesn't like letters. The first set of 3 digits is the area number, the second set of 2 digits is the group number, and then the final set of 4 digits is the serial number.
I never knew what those numbers meant. I thought they just went in order, like this is the number you were born in or something. I don't know.
Don't care about that, obviously. The point is, I have both a NIN and an SSN, so I'm special.
Yeah, you are. Time.
Time.
Okay.
Is it real? Oh, that's a different
That's just the 12-hour, 24-hour kind of thing that I was going back or talking about earlier.
video. Well, sometimes, to people like me who've lived on 3 different time zones, time can feel like it's ahead of its time. So I don't want to get bogged down in that, because there are other differences to talk about, namely how we tell the time. For instance, in Britain, if the time is 9:15, we might well say it's 9:15.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then like 9:30 would be like it's half nine, right? Short for 9:30, meaning 9:30, stuff like that, where we would just say 9:30, or a quarter, if it was 9:15, it'd be like a quarter after 9, or 9:45 would be like a quarter to 10.
In America, you often hear a 9:15, and similarly, Brits might refer to 9:30 as 9:30.
Did he just say similarly? What?
Whereas Americans might say 9:30. But the biggest
Yeah.
difference between British and American digital clocks can be seen once we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At that point
Yeah.
in America, clocks will simply say 1 o'clock. But not in Britain, where it suddenly goes from 12:59 to 13 o'clock.
Yep.
And that's because British clocks are on military time. And when I lived in Britain, I never knew this as military time. In fact, it was Americans that alerted me to this term. I just thought
And the reason that the military uses that term is probably because all the other, like everywhere else does use the 24-hour time frame. So the military, of course, needs to be on the same time frame as the rest of the world for military reasons and blah 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 blah. So here in the United States, since our military is the only ones that really use that time format, we tend to call it military time, even though that's not really. It's probably only viewed as military time in the United States because of that reason.
and I never knew this as military time. In fact, it was Americans that alerted me to this term. I just thought of it as time, like the whole world does this. And now that
Yeah.
I know that it is military time, I'm confused that America doesn't do it, because they have the biggest military in the world. And then I found that the US military does do it, but the general public doesn't. Either way, to this very day, I instinctively know that 7 p.m. in the evening, that last word was redundant, is equal to 19 o'clock. I should point out that British people don't go around saying 19 o'clock. In conversation, we would say 7, which makes it even weirder, I suppose, that our clocks don't do that.
Interesting. What would you say? You just say it's 19, but you'd say it's 7 o'clock. Interesting. A quarter. This one I don't know. I have no speculation or insight on, so a quarter. Let's see.
But anyway, a moment ago when I was talking about quarters, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, because it wasn't quite relevant yet, and that's how the two countries refer to a quarter, as in the fraction. Because I've noticed that Americans, like my wife for example, use the words quarter and 1/4 interchangeably.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right? What? Why would... Are we not supposed to? Is that wrong? A quarter of... Okay, we're gonna have to see what this is all
But
about.
having grown up in Britain, 1/4 always sounds weird to me, because then we would only say quarter in that context. But I'm afraid that I'm going to have to interrupt myself there with a couple of caveats. The first of those is we don't have special words for other fractions, except for half. But then again, if you were to say 1/2, you could get confused with the time. And the other thing that might explain why Americans often plump for 1/4 is that a quarter is already part of the national dialogue, because that's the name of an American coin of the same name. Did you edit this?
Okay, so they're saying that in Britain that the fraction would just be called a quarter, that they wouldn't say 1/4. We call it a quarter also, but I guess that's why I'm saying interchangeably. We definitely call it a quarter, but I guess there are some people that would say a fourth. Hmm, interesting. 0, huh? I don't know. I don't know about this one either.
And I want to finish this video by talking about 3 numbers in particular, the first of which is 0. Is 0 a number? I'm no mathematician.
I think.
And 0 is an interesting one to me because both countries have synonyms of the word 0 that the other country doesn't have.
Why? Why is that so fuzzy? I don't know. I mean, it's not relevant to the video, but like, look, you're watching me react, okay? So this is how I react. This is how I do things. I get distracted, and that's just a crazy furry number. I've never seen something like that.
In America, somebody might say, I got zilch, as in, I've got nothing. Whereas Britain's alternatives for this nice round number are often context dependent. Firstly, you've got nil, which
I've heard this. Not something that you would say as much, but I've heard it.
you often find in sport, as in, Grimsby Town Football Club won the FA Cup final 6-0, whereas American commentators are more likely to say 6-0 or 6 to
Yeah.
zilch. And then there's the word naught, which from memory is what I call
I feel like I should know this. Is it like past?
zero when I was a little kid. But it's also used in the title of a game that Americans call tic-tac-toe, a game that we call noughts and crosses. And remember earlier when I said this? My area code was 01472. This use of O to denote 0 in phone numbers is not something you often hear in America, where the preferred option would be 01472.
It's supposed to be 0, but sometimes people say it different, right? So hypothetically, I'm going to change it. You know, I don't want people to know my number, but hypothetically, my number's 7005, like the last 4 digits, right? Sometimes, you know, somebody would say, or I'm guilty of it, I would say like 7005, even though I know it means 0. I know it's not a letter, it's a number. I sometimes, you know, I don't know why, and other people do too. 7.
And then there were 7, or 2 actually, but 7 is one of them. Here,
What does 7 have to do with what? You guys do 7 different?
in the United States, the number 7 is almost always written with one horizontal stroke and one diagonal stroke.
I see. So this is the one where it's got like the little line. So you're drawing 7, and then you got the little tiny line in between. I've seen it done this way. I think that's what he's going to talk about.
But as many observant Americans have often pointed out to me, this is not always the case in Britain, where to that we like to add another horizontal stroke through the middle. And
I guess I'm an observant American. Yay.
you might be thinking, why do you do that? And the answer
I don't
is
know why.
simple: to avoid confusion with the number 1. And
Yeah, but most of the time people ain't doing 1 over here with the slash on the top. And what you do to make the 1s not confused with the 7s when you do the little hook thing on the top is you draw a line at the bottom under the 1, kind of like the bottom of an I, right? You know, the I has a line at the top and bottom. You just do the bottom line, and then you do the little hook angled line at the top if you're going to stylize your 1 that way here. So you change in the 1 up instead of the 7 if you do it that way. Most of the time people just draw 1, just a straight line.
And to all of the Americans laughing at this idea, 7-Eleven agrees with me. I've just realised that's probably not an argument in my favour.
Billion? Okay, this one's different too, huh? I'm too poor though. I don't even have a billion pennies.
And finally, how do you define 1 billion? Well, most people today who have a grasp of big numbers would tell you 1,000 million, but
I would say it's out of my reach. But yes, it's 1,000 millions for sure, right?
try telling that to British people from before the 70s. And that's because before 1974, British people, as well as a host of other countries, defined.
But I was guilty. I'm going to pause it now before he says, but because I don't know what he's going to say. It's first time reaction. It's the format of the show. I've never seen this video. But I used to think a billion was a million millions. And then somebody corrected me and said it was 1,000 millions. So maybe they also thought it was a million millions because it's a big number. I don't even know for sure which one's correct at this point, but you know what I mean?
Find a billion as 1 million million, otherwise known as a long billion, or more commonly, a trillion. And you
But see, I was dumb. I don't know nothing about no giant numbers like that.
might be thinking, what did those British people call 1,000 million? And the answer is simple: 1,000 million. However, all of this ceased to be the case when we followed the American example, a decision that was taken by 69th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson, not to be confused with 67th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson. Thus,
Okay, so I had the same concept as the British people then. Like a billion should be a million millions, right? Because isn't a million like 1,000 thousands?
Said most European countries actually still operate under the long billion, which makes you wonder, is Luxembourg the richest country just because it keeps adding on 3 zeros? I've no idea. Well,
I know there's somebody from Luxembourg watching my video out there. I know there's somebody out there. You need to drop a comment. That's funny.
it's adding on 3 zeros. I've no idea.
Final
Well, if I've
words.
learned anything today, it's that both countries have a very different set of numbers and occasionally letters. And for somebody who's already not very good at maths, this video has really made me miss my word videos. Anyway, thank you to my ponderers with whom I recently discussed this topic on our secret live streams.
So go check out his channel, guys. He does great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. Love his humor. Absolutely love his humor. And let me know down below about these number things. Is there anything he missed? I don't know. You guys have a super fun, awesome day. I'll catch you next one. Take care. Bye.